Hi, welcome to Tradition Today. I'm Father David Smith, and in a few moments we'll be going to St. George's Orthodox Church in Utica, New York for a sermon I preached on Forgiveness Sunday. This is the day, Forgiveness Sunday is the day before the beginning of Lent in the Orthodox Church. And my subject for that Sunday is the subject of self-denial. And I'm preaching on that Sunday from a passage from the Gospel of St. Mark. I'm reading from the New King James Version. I'll read it for you now. I'm in the Gospel of St. Mark, chapter 8, and verses 34 through 37. When he had called the people to himself, with his disciples also, it's talking about Jesus, he said to them, "Whoever desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul?" You know, this passage of Scripture really hit me at one point during the time I was studying in seminary. Of course, I was in seminary because I had decided to go into the pastorate. I had decided to become a priest, and I was studying there, and I was, spending my savings, and my wife and I were working very hard, and I was going to school during the day and working at night and so on, and all of these things were going on so that we would be able to perhaps get a good church someplace. And I remember talking to a friend of mine at that time, and we were talking about the ambivalent feelings we had about wanting to go wherever God sent us, to the mission field or to some inner city parish or something like that, wanting to do whatever God wanted us to do, but at the same time wanting to have a nice church with a nice office and maybe a staff and our own parking spot and a nice car to put in it and a nice home and something nice for our families and our wife, and live in a nice neighborhood and so on and so forth, because we knew those churches were out there. And I went to a seminary where people could graduate and expect to be in a good church. And as we went back and forth, we came to this passage in the Gospel of Mark. And what does it say there? "If anyone, whoever desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." We were in a class together, this friend of mine and I were studying the Gospel of Mark. And as we looked into this passage deeper and deeper and deeper, and translated it from the Greek and began to look at all the words and to think about what it said, this began to touch us more and more and more as to what it meant, as to how that God was calling us to follow Him wherever He led us, to not worry about those worldly things. We were talking about it one day as we used to work at the same place too, and we were driving back from work together. He was driving and I was in the passenger seat. We were talking about this, how our hearts had been so touched by this, how it terrified us even to put ourselves in the hand of God. Could we trust God to watch out after us? As odd as that sounds, we were wondering, we were asking ourselves, what are we doing here? In whose hands are we putting ourselves? And as we were going along, he saw that he needed gasoline. We pulled up to a service station. We stopped in front of one of the pumps, and we were still talking a little bit, and as we were talking, he paused for a moment and he looked over, and there was this big red sign on the side of the pump that said self-serve. And he looked at it and he said, self-serve. He looked back at me and he goes, I guess that really describes me, doesn't it? Every time I go to a gas station now and I drive up to the self-serve place, I always go there because it's so much cheaper. Every time I drive up to the self-serve place, I look at that sign and I think about that moment. And I think about the extent to which we find ourselves being self-serving so often. Even those of us who are clergy find ourselves to be self-serving so often. But if we listen to this passage, there's a particular word that comes out again and again. Whoever desires to come after me. I'm thinking about the word desire. Let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Listen to verse 35. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. You know what this passage is about? You know what this passage is about in St. Mark's Gospel, chapter 8, when Jesus says, take up your cross? This passage is about desire. This passage makes us ask the question, what do you want? What do you want in your life? You know, I really believe that that is the essential question of life. What do you want? Because once we come to some conclusion about this question, once we're able to answer that question and begin walking in the direction of whatever it is we've decided we want, once we're able to do that, we give ourselves identity. We make ourselves into what we will become in this world, in this life, in our community and our family and our workplace. We become who we were meant to be, or who we've decided to be. I know I've met a number of young people in the past who say that their whole desire is for money. That's what they want. If you ask them, what do you want out of life? They want money. And so you don't even need to ask them that question, but you can just talk to them for a few moments, and you can tell by talking to them and listening to them and hearing about their life that they are living according to a shallow desire. Their life is shallow, and the words are shallow, and everything is shallow about them. Sometimes you hear people say, what I want most in life, I want to be a good family man. I want to be a good father and a good provider. But you know what happens? I think that we often come to some understanding of what it is that we desire. And we might say, I want to be a good family man. I want to be a good provider. But then, as we go about moving toward that goal, somewhere along the way, we get misled. We get off track, if you will. You say to yourself, I want to be a good provider for my family. One of the ways I do that is I go out and get a job. And then maybe you begin to work more and more and more at your job, and to do more and to spend more time. And then what you've done is you've made the goal of your life that job, and perhaps you've even destroyed any chance that you have of reaching the other goal, the primary goal that you have, of being a good family man, of being a good provider. I had a friend like this one time. I remember he worked for a fast food place. I won't tell you which one, but he was the manager of a fast food restaurant. franchise kind of place. I think it's a franchise. And he went away. He was working all the time there. He seemed to work hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And then he went away to this place to a meeting, a convention of all managers in a particular district. This was a nice place where they went. I can't remember where it was. It was like Hawaii or Orlando or something like that. And he went away to this place and he came back, and I said, yeah, what was it like there? And he said to me, it was really great. He says, we're really gonna make some changes. We're really gonna make it great, making it great. You know, if you remember, there was an advertising slogan that this particular fast food restaurant used. I'm not going to tell you the restaurant, but you can think of it if you remember the slogan. He says, we're going to make it great. We're going to make it great. He said that over and over. And I said to him, you are making it great. You make great pizzas. Your place is very clean. Your employees are very happy. You're working there 100 hours a week. What more do you want? See, this had become his life. Friendships, no. Family, no. Any self-fulfillment, no. Church even, no. What was important to him was making great pizza. And this was what he wanted more than anything. You see, I think that we set our goals at some point in our life, and we think about them, what our desire is. But if we're not careful, along the way, we begin to lose track of that, and we go off onto side tangents, to side routes, and we get ourselves lost. You know, there is another thing that we can name as our goal for our life. If I were to say to you, what do you want? You might say to me, I want to know God. I want to be a good Christian. I want to have Jesus Christ living in me. You could say that, and that encompasses a whole bunch of different areas of our life. It can encompass a whole range of activities that we might pursue during the day, your work and your family life, and even driving from place to place. Your decision to be a good Christian can affect those things and should affect those things. As we see in this passage, whoever desires to come after me. That's what this is saying. It's saying, what is the desire of your life? Is it to follow Jesus Christ? Well, then here it is. You desire that most in your life? Jesus is giving you a hint. Let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. You see, that's another thing that happens when we're able to answer that question, what do you want? When we answer that question and we answer it with integrity, not only do we define who we are, but we can come to some maturity about leaving behind our moment-to-moment desires, setting them aside in order to reach a goal we know to be more important. We're able to say, I can deny myself in order to reach the goal that I long for the most. You hear the irony in that? There's something that you've chosen that you want more than anything, and you deny yourself in order to reach it. You've set a goal that defines who you are, and then you set aside who you are in order to maintain the discipline to get there. You can hear that in this passage. Whoever desires to save his life will lose it. Whoever desires, Jesus is saying, to live moment by moment according to what he wants alone is going to lose his life. But whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will find it. As we come to this time of Lent, the sermon that I delivered on the Sunday of Forgiveness is a sermon really that I deliver in the effort of preparing my parish for the observation of Lent. As we come to this time of Lent, we come to a time of self-denial. But we need to realize all the time that self-denial is not its own goal. If I ask you most what you want in life, you don't say, most what I want in life is to deny myself. No. You say you want something else. And as we embrace self-denial, we recommit ourselves to that goal that we desire, the longing of our hearts, the desire of our life that defines who we are. So let's go to St. George's Orthodox Church on a beautiful Sunday morning in March of the year 2000 and listen to this sermon on self-denial from Forgiveness Sunday.
We come today to the Sunday of Forgiveness, the Sunday when we gather together to do the rite of mutual forgiveness at the end of the liturgy. I want to leave time for that today. Although we haven't got a huge group of people, still we'll leave a little bit of time for that today. But first, a few comments before we begin. A Sunday of Forgiveness, or Cheese Fair Sunday, always brings to mind the fact that tomorrow we begin the season of Lent. And when we think of Lent, we usually think about the fasting, the confession, the almsgiving, the extra services, all of those things that we don't normally do and that we don't normally want to do. We come to those things during this time of Lent. In reality, Lent is really an ongoing expression of self-denial. That's really what Lent is all about, is self-denial. And it's difficult for us to get into Lent sometimes because we live in a society that seems to say that we shouldn't really be involved in any self-denial, that we don't want to deny ourselves, that we want to do everything possible to get as much as we can for ourselves. And so I've had people ask me, why self-denial? Why should I do that kind of thing? Why, living in this society, do we need to do that? Well, I want to talk about two things today. First of all, I think that self-denial is a part of our lives a lot more than we realize. And second of all, I think that self-denial of Lent is necessary for every Christian. First of all, when you talk about self-denial, you're really talking about two different things. The first is self-denial that is goal-oriented, like an athlete that trains and lifts weights and goes running and then practices foul shots again and again and again and again and again in order to make sure that he has what he needs for the game that's coming up. Or a musician. Or even I might say, if you're walking up a hill and there's something at the top of the hill you want, when you're halfway up the hill, your body says to you that it doesn't want to go anymore. I'm tired of walking up the hill. I want to sit down. Your body wants you to go back down the hill and watch some television and have something to eat. But you have something on your mind that you want to reach at the top, so you tell your body to be quiet and you keep on going up to the top. This is self-denial. And it's not only in athletics and music and things like that, but it's in our studies. When we go to school, we deny ourselves. That's why we have to urge children to go to school. It's good for them, but they're not quite ready for the self-denial thing. We have to pull them out of bed and put them on the bus, and when they come home, we have to threaten them to do their homework. And also just in our jobs. Tomorrow morning when your alarm clock goes off and it's time to go to work, you're going to wake up and you're going to get out of bed and you're going to go. But your body is saying, no, let's not go today. Let's get back in bed and sleep a little bit longer. It'll be okay. See, for most of us, for so many years, we've been neglecting that voice, telling that voice to be quiet. We don't even hear it anymore. I don't. When my alarm clock goes off, I jump out of bed and I get my day started. I don't lay in bed thinking to myself, gee, I wonder if I should stay, but nah, yeah, well, no. You get out and you do what needs to be done. This is self-denial. Denying what your body is telling you to do. St. Paul calls it the sarx, the flesh. Your flesh is calling you to do something, and yet you have a higher goal that you want to reach for. There's another kind of self-denial too, and that's self-denial of relationships. Anytime you're in relationship with another person, there is some degree to which you must deny yourself. It could be anything from me driving up to my house, and I've had a long day and I'm tired and I want to just go inside and put on some casual clothes and sit down and have something to eat or something like that. But I see my neighbor outside raking her lawn, and so I go over and I say, hi, how are you? And I talk to her for a little while. I'm denying myself. If she wasn't there, I would want to go right in. She's there, so and I want a good relationship with my neighbor, so I do that. I deny myself. And before I got married, before I got married, I could do anything I wanted. I could go anywhere I wanted. I could spend my money foolishly and no one would tell me that it was bad. I could decorate my home in the most hideous manner, and even my friends would come over and say, boy, that's really great. Because all my friends were men like me. But then I got married, and then all of a sudden there's this whole other thing. Oh my goodness, you have to worry about the time. How are you spending your time? How are you spending your money? They throw the towel on the floor and wife gets all upset. And what's wrong with the towel on the towel on the floor or on the rack? It's still in the bathroom. You can find it when you come back the next day. But you have, when you're in a relationship, you move toward the person. You deny yourself in such a way that you move toward that person, and that person denies themselves and they move toward you. And relationship is also self-denial. When we come to Lent, we do both of those things. When we come to Lent, we deny ourselves in order to reach a goal. We deny ourselves in order to be in relationship. The goal that we're going for is spiritual life. This is the time of year when the church says it's time to concentrate on your spiritual life. It's time to think about your spiritual life. Maybe we haven't been doing that a lot. Maybe we've had other things on our mind during January and February. After the Nativity fast, you eat a lot and you have a lot of fun and you think about other things. Now the church says, now it's time to get back into that. Think about your spiritual life. The spiritual life, unfortunately, but I mean it's the way it is with all things that are worth anything, the spiritual life consists of discipline. We have to be disciplined in order to make our spiritual lives grow. It's the way it is with anything. Physically, mentally, whatever it is, we have to have some discipline in order to get something from our spiritual lives. Not a lot of people believe that nowadays. I've seen these books called chicken soup books. I don't know if you've seen these. Chicken soup for the soul and for the teenager, for the new mother and the unemployed worker, and they have a whole bunch of them now, a whole library of chicken soup books. I don't have anything against them. You open it and you read a little story that makes you feel good. And there are people who believe that to be spiritual. It's not spiritual. Feeling good and spiritual are two separate things. And there are times when we are working on our spiritual lives when we're not necessarily going to feel good about it. It's what people have said to me about the Orthodox Church. I come to the Orthodox Church and I don't feel good. The music doesn't make me feel good. I go to the church down the street and it makes me feel good. And your church doesn't make me feel good. I never understand what you're saying. I can't understand the words. The music is boring and la-di-da-di-da. So, well, I have news. It's not always the case that when you're working on your spiritual life, you're going to feel good about it. No, rather it's discipline. It's hard work. Sometimes it's work that we don't want to do, but it's work worth doing. It's a goal worth achieving. It begins by coming to church, but that's just the beginning. That gets you into the game. I think think if you come to church and you don't do anything else besides that, it's like going to a class in a university. If you go in late, and then you sit there and you're thinking about other things, and then when it's over, it's over, and you get up and you leave, and you never do anything, you never read a book or write a paper, well, you're not going to do well in that class. You're going to fail that class. You had the potential because you were there in the room, and the professor got to see you. But you missed the potential because you didn't add anything to it. There's a discipline in the spiritual life. And the second one is relationship. But the relationship we build during Lent is very different than any other relationship. The relationship that we have to God is very different. What does the liturgy says about God? That He's ever existing and eternally the same. God is ever existing and eternally the same. When it comes to our relationship with God, God doesn't move. God is the same. He's set. He's perfect in Himself. You have to move. It's you and I that have to do the moving toward God. And when we're moving in this direction, away from God, that's called sin. And the reason we talk so much about sin during Lent is because we want to stop that from happening. Here we are, moving further and further away from God. You want to figure out what it is that's doing that. And you want to say, I want to stop that and I want to move in the other direction. Lent is the time when we think seriously about that movement in the wrong direction. We concentrate on it. This week I went down to Guatemala with Bill Gant to pick up his new little son, Brooke. And I'm very thankful for everybody that prayed for us because we had a very wonderful trip. It was exhausting, though. It was very fast and it was very exhausting. And we had a long day of traveling on Wednesday. And we got into JFK, and we found our car in the long-term parking. When we got to the car, got the baby and the bags in the car and everything. And we took off toward Utica, and I made a wrong turn. It was the first time during the whole trip that we had anything go wrong. And it wasn't that wrong. I just was whipping along whatever route it was, and I could see the exit go by. When the exit went by, I said to Bill, I think that was our exit. Well, we had been chatting up to that point, and we had been thinking about getting dinner. As we got into JFK about 4:30, and it was about 5:30 by the time we had that happen. We were thinking about dinner and thinking about changing the baby and yada, 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 all these things. We were thinking about these things, but from the moment I passed that exit, we were thinking only one thing, and that was how to get back the right way. We went up and we turned, got off the exit, back on, and came back around. And then when we were going the right direction, then we began to think about some other things. That's Lent. Lent is when you say to yourself, I'm not on track, I'm not completely on track, I know where I should go, and until I'm going there, I'm going to concentrate on that. Concentrate on that. So as we come to this time of Lent, this time of self-denial, fasting, almsgiving, confession, extra services in the church, and extra prayers at home. As we come to this time, let's embrace this as a time of self-denial. Embrace this because it gives us a goal that's worth reaching, and it gives us a relationship that is worth strengthening, both now and ever and unto ages of ages. Amen.